Okay, and good evening, everyone. Saying good evening again for any time. I will tell you that I did record earlier today both the Mishnah Yaimis and for the Shabbos table. There's a 29-minute for the Shabbos table already on the systems. Also, we're going to have, as it's Hashem, a chok tonight. So a full evening as we welcome in Michael joining us here. And we are sponsored by A.B. Spry for the safety of our troops. Let's not forget that, for us the war is growing old, but for them it's a real grave danger every single day. And for Klal Yisrael in general, and for Issa Ben Yuta, for Shimon Klein, by Shimon Klein, Nishmas Asher Anshe Ben Yehuda, Gittel Bashim and Pinchas, Irving Fishburne for the schus of Issa Ben Razel, and Dr. Black asks us to learn Lili Nishmas Elazar Ben Mordechai, and we continue to learn for our Chaver Adaf, Yitzi Fuchs, Yitzhak Mordechai, Ben Esther Bracha, should have Refu Shalem and B'Sech Shachal Yisrael, no scares, only easy sailing, we begin 2 lines from the bottom on Daf Nun Hamid Beis. So we learned that 4 cases where you're pater b'dinei adam, you can't be held accountable in a human court, but you're chayiv ethically, morally b'dinei shemayim. And we're going to go over these 4 cases now. Amamar hapiritz geder b'fnei chaveris behemis chaveroi. If one breaks down the fence before marshal's animal, so heichi dami, that we say that who breaks it down? Who's the bad guy over here? Okay, Shelley looks like a bad guy tonight. He's hiding behind the screen. He doesn't even want to let us see what he's doing, skulking around behind the scenes. So if Shelley knocks down, if Shelley knocks down the wall, so Ilema b'kaisel bari, if it was a good wall, and now because it's knocked down, the marshal's animal gets lost or does damage, b'dinei adam nami nechayiv. He should be chayiv even b'dinei adam. The Gemara says. So Rashi says a chiddush. Rashi says he won't be chayav for the damages that the shar does. He won't even be chayav for marshal's shar, but because that's a grama. But at least he should be chayav for breaking marshal's wall. That's what Rashi says. Very interesting Rashi. Says Rashi, Nia kaisel. At least he should be chayav for marshal's wall. There'll be a dime of it. But v'abehema lekelameim de mechayiv tanan pirtzu listim if bandits broken open potter. But at least he should be chayiv for marshal's wall. Says the Gemara b'kaisel ru'ua. It's a rickety wall. It's a wall that isn't worth anything. It's going to anyway have to be demolished, and that's why Shelley doesn't have to pay for it. So what does it mean then? B'dinei shemayim chayiv. Ethically he's chayiv. Oh, b'dinei shemayim he's chayiv if marshal's animal gets lost, even though it's a grama, even though it's only causative, but ethically he has to pay him. Now, Amamar, let's go to the next case. HaKoifev kamasai shel chaveroi b'fnei adleika. If he takes marshal's crops and bends it in the course of the fire. So the Gemara says he's pater b'dinei adam v'chayiv b'dinei shemayim. So the Gemara says, hey chidami, what's the circumstances? If he bends marshal's crops in the way of the fire and he could reach it in a normal wind, then Shelley should be chayiv even b'dinei adam, because he put it in the fire's path. B'dinei adam nami nechayiv. Ela dematya b'ruach she'ena mitzuya. He caused it to reach it only with a ruach she'ena mitzuya, only with a unexpected wind, a wind that's not normal. So there he's not chayiv b'dinei adam, he's only chayiv b'dinei shemayim. Stronger wind, correct. Rav Ashi says what Shelley did is he tucked Marshall's crops under a tarp. So even though we're going to see later that Shelley might have had good intent to protect the crops, but because of that, when the crops got burnt, the one who lit the fire doesn't have to pay for them because it's tumen, it's hidden. And we said tumen beish is pater. Rav Ashi Amar tumen itmar, he hid it under a tarp, mishum deshavya tumen beish, now he made it something that's covered that the owner of the fire doesn't have to pay for, because remember we said that tumen beish is pater. What's the next case? Amamar, hasoicher eidei sheker. If here Shelley hired false witnesses to take away money, so the Gemara says, "Heichi dami." If he hired false witnesses to say that Marshall owed him $100,000, and he absconds with $100,000. So of course he has to give Marshall back the $100,000. He can't walk away with ill-gotten gains. So then he would be chayiv even b'dinei adam. Mamayna b'yishlume or b'dinei adam nami nechayiv. He should be chayiv even b'dinei adam, even in a court of law. Ela lechavre. No, what happened is Shelley hired two witnesses to say that Marshall owes the money to Gedalia. Oh, he owes the money to Gedalia, and Gedalia now doesn't have money to pay. Or Gedalia is in Mexico and we can't find him. So there, we can't take the money away from Marshall, but B'dinei Shemayim, he has to pay. The next case is, Shelley knows testimony on behalf of Marshall, and he doesn't give the testimony. So the Gemara says, "B'may askinan." What are we talking about? Ilaima bebeit trei, that there's another witness, and Shelley could have testified, thereby allowing Marshall to collect money from Richard. And now that he doesn't testify, Marshall can't collect the money. Pshita, it's obvious that he's going to be chayiv b'dinei shemayim. Doraiso, it's a mitzvah doraisa that you're not allowed to refrain from giving testimony. Imlo yagid, that if he doesn't tell what he knows, v'nas avayna, he has to bear a sin. Ela b'chad, it's talking about where there's only one witness. In other words, Shelley is the only one. So you'll say, if Shelley is the only one that knows that Richard owes Marshall money, so Marshall wouldn't be able to collect, because ein davar shebamam and pachas mishnayim. However, if Shelley would have given the testimony, then Richard would have to swear, and perhaps he wouldn't want to swear falsely, and he would pay Marshall. So he's costing Marshall that money on the side that maybe Richard wouldn't want to swear, and he would pay Marshall. So he has to pay b'dinei shemayim. So the Gemara now says, come on, these are the only 4 places in Shas where you're pater b'dinei adam, you're pater in a human court, but you're chaya b'dinei shemayim? There's a whole bunch of other cases. Well, now the din is hezek she'ena nikar, a damage that's not recognizable. Loishmei hezek, you can't collect in a human court for that. An example of that is, if you have meichatis and you do work with the meichatis, now the meichatis, the water which is mixed with the ashes of the paraduma, which allows a person that's a tamei mace, when you spray him on the 3rd and the 7th day, it allows him to become tar. And the parachatas and the paraduma itself, if you do work with it, like you put the water on one side of a scale to be a counterweight, you disqualify it. So the din is ha'isa malacha b'mei chatos or b'paras chatos with the paraduma is worth a pretty penny. Pater midinei adam, you're pater in a human court, because it's a hezek shein a nicker, it's not a discernible damage, but v'chayiv b'dinei shemayim, so that's another case. If you put poison in front of your friend's animal, because we learned earlier in the Masechta that the animal shouldn't have eaten it, but because you put a stumbling block in its path. If you put, and we'll learn like this different pshatim, but we'll learn like the pshat that you gave a coal to a deaf, mute, imbecile, and a minor. Now the coal would have gone out, but the deaf, mute, imbecile, and minor fanned it, because the action was done by the Charishayt of the cotton, but the Chayiv B'dinei Shemayim, you're Chayiv ethically. If you scare someone and they go deaf because they were scared, because it's considered causative, but the Chayiv B'dinei Shemayim. There's another case, Nishbar Akadav Rishus Harabim, in the event where Marshall breaks his pitcher in the Rishus Harabim. V'loi Silka, and he doesn't remove it, but he renounces ownership of it. And he broke it by stumbling. And then he renounces ownership of it. Nafli Gamloi, he was leading his camel, tripped, and the animal tripped. And then he renounced rights to it. V'loi Hamida, Rameya Mechayiv Bezekim, Rameya holds his chayiv, even though he renounced ownership. Because since he renounced ownership and then somebody stumbled on it, he holds that you're not chayiv. But the bottom line is we have a lot of cases where you can't collect in a human court, but you're morally chayiv. So the Gemara says, there are many cases. But v'hani itzrichale, these four cases, I would think you shouldn't even be chayiv ethically. As the Gemara explains, you shouldn't even be chayiv ethically to pay. Kamash Malan. Why in these four cases? So the Gemara explains. If he knocks down the wall before Marshall's animal, and remember we said it's a rickety wall. That's why he doesn't have to pay for the wall. So there I might say if the animal gets lost, he shouldn't even be chayiv ethically to pay Marshall. Why? Because Shelley says, I did it because the wall might fall down on someone and kill them. So I did a morally proper thing. Since this wall was anyway going to be dismantled, Ma'ovid, what did he do? If anything, he did a good duty. He was a good Samaritan because he took a menace away from the public. Kamash Malan, that he's chayiv at least b'dinei shemayim. Also, the case of Akoifev Kamasa Shel Chavera Nami, where Shelley bent Marshall's crops in the way of the fire, and it wouldn't have reached it b'dinei with a ruach matzuya. Mao the Sema, we would think Shelley could say, what did I think, that there was going to be a hurricane? A gale of 70 miles, winds of 70 miles an hour? How could I anticipate that? How would I know that? Therefore, since it's an unforeseen circumstance, maybe Shelley shouldn't be chayiv even b'dinei shemayim. Kamash Malan. Now, according to that which we said that Shelley covered it with a tarp, and therefore the one of the fire didn't have to pay because it was tamen, I might think that Shelley could say, look, I only covered it to protect it from getting scorched. That's why I threw the tarp over it. I was covering it to protect it. And he shouldn't even be chayiv ethically, Kamash Malan. And where he hired false witnesses, you know what Shelley says? I hired Menachem and Shimon. They should have listened to me. I should be chayiv. They should have listened to me. Ma'odesema, lema divrei harav, the divrei hatalmud, divrei mishamin. Who you listen to? You listen to God or you listen to me? Right? That's why it says, Ein shlich l'dvar ve'eres. So maybe he shouldn't be chayiv at all. But in Shemayim nami loy l'chayiv, kamash malan. And and where he knows testimony on behalf of Marshall, where he said where he was one witness, and he didn't say it, he says, why do you want me b'chayiv? Because if I would have testified as a lone witness to Richard that he owes money to Marshall, he would be chayiv to swear, and he wouldn't. Maybe he won't swear and pay. Who doesn't swear if they can get out of paying? Who says if I would have testified Havimoida, Richard would have fessed up instead of swearing, and therefore I cost him money? Nah. Dilma have a mishtavel shikra. Maybe he would have swore falsely. Or b'din shemayim not melei chayiv. I shouldn't be chayiv even b'din shemayim. Kamash malan. We don't say that. Now the Mishnah continues. Nifritza b'layla, if an animal broke out in the nighttime, oisha pertzua listim, or the listim took down the wall, so in such a case, Marshall is potter. So when it broke out in the night, how did it break out? If Marshall made a proper shmira, so then how did it break out? Amar Rabba v'hu shechatra. That's only if it tunneled under the door. Avaloi chatra mai, but if it didn't tunnel under the door, so then if it broke out in the night, Marshall is chayiv. But why? Hechidami mai chayiv. Hechidami ilayma b'kaisel bari. If it's he put up a good wall, if he knocks down the wall, why should Marshall be chayiv? Kiloi chatra, if it didn't tunnel underneath the wall, if it broke through the wall, amai chayiv. If he made a good wall, what should he have done? Ella says the Gemara, b'kaisel ru'ua. It must be a rickety wall. So if it's a rickety wall, so if it went through the wall, Marshall would be chayiv because it was rickety. But if it tunnels underneath, Marshall is potter. Says the Gemara, ki chatra, then if it tunnels underneath, amai potter. In the beginning it was a pshia because he didn't have a good wall. Now it tunneled under, that's an einus. Amai potter, tchilas b'pshia v'seif b'ayis. Now, nichalamandi amar, tchilas b'pshia, where he was initially negligent by not making a good wall, v'seif b'ayis, and then he tunneled under it, potter, that's good. Elamandi amar, tchilas b'pshia v'seif b'ayis, chayiv. But according to the Mandiyama, where initially is a pesher by putting a rickety wall, and at the end it tunneled underneath, chayiv, then why does our Mishnah say potter? Ma'ikal ameimer. Elamas nisim b'kaisel bari. And the din is that he's potter, va'afilu loy chatra. Even if it doesn't tunnel under, even if it breaks through, it's potter, because since he made a good wall, so he's an einus. Ma'avan le'lameimer. The chiyitma de Rabba, and when Rabba said it's talking about where he tunneled under, a seifa itma. It's talking about the latter part of the Mishnah. Hanicha b'chama, if you put the animal in the sun, or you gave it over to a deaf mute, an imbecile, and a minor, and it went out and did damage, chayiv. So if you put it in the sun, and it went out and did damage, you're chayiv. Amar Rabba, if you put it in the sun and it went out and did damage, you're chayiv afilu chatra, even if it tunneled under. So the Gemara says, loy mibai heicha de loy chatra, where it didn't have to tunnel under the kula b'pshiu, el afilu chatra, even if you left it in the sun and then it tunneled out, pshihi. It's a full. It says Gemara, now you will say, you mean if you left it in the sun, it's irritable and it will go out and damage, that's a pshia. Even if it tunnels underneath, it's tchilasa b'pshia v'seifa b'aynis. Ma'ad the same mahavila tchilasa b'pshia v'seifa b'aynis. Kamashmala, no, it's not totally in that machlokes. If you put it in the sun, then it's going to get away from the sun no matter how, even if it has to tunnel. And even if it tunnels, it's considered a pshia. Says the Gemara, Kamashma on the kula pshia, my timer. The Amalei made the yodis, the cave in the shafkis bechama. If you leave it in the sun and it becomes so uncomfortable, after all, it's going to act like an animal. Kol tats isla lamevin of the any way it can, it's going to do, and it's going to get out. V'nafka, so the whole thing is considered a pshia. Now, says the Gemara, Hoitzi'ua listim, if bandits take it out, listim chayavim. So the Gemara says, well, if Berish steals it from Marshall, so of course Berish is going to come in the place of Marshall. So of course Berish is going to be chayav. Pshita, Kevin Dapkua, since Berish takes it out, it's in his possession, l'kol milei, to be chayav for everything in the place of Marshall. Now the Rishonim say over here halachically, although Berish can't acquire it when Marshall is not giving it over, but he does acquire it to be liable. Says the Gemara, late tzricha, where Berish didn't make a ma'aser kinyan. He broke open the corral, and he stood in the animal's way until it went out. In other words, in any other direction, when it wanted to go to the back, he stood in its way, and he didn't move until the animal had only one direction to go out. So although he didn't make a ma'aser meshicha, we still say that Berish is chayiv. Like tzricha de kamala ba'apa, ki od the amar rabba amar rav masna amar rav, hamamid behemis chaveiroi al kamas chaveiroi. If Berish causes Marshall's animal to go on Abi's crops, chayiv. So the Gemara says, Mamid, if he takes it and puts it on Abi's crops, pshita, he walked in front of it and he didn't allow it to go anywhere until the only route he gave it was to go to Abi's crops. Amalei Rabbi Rav Yosef. So Rabbi says to Rav Yosef, no, you don't have to learn that way. The chiddush is that when he takes a stick and hits it, and it causes it to go, that's Mashicha. Like normal case of Mashicha is where you pull it, or you call to it and it comes to you. It's teaching us that even if you hit it with a stick, it's considered like it's in your possession when it does your command. Hikisha Amritlan, the case where Berish leads it to Abi's crops is where he hits it with a stick. Velistam Nami de Kishua, where they hit it with a stick and it goes before them, that's considered like a Kinyan Mashicha. Therefore, it comes into Berish's Rishus, at least to the extent of liability. Masra L'Raya, if Marshall gives it to a shepherd, Nichnis Haraya Tachta. So if Marshall gives it to a shepherd, the shepherd is in Marshall's place. Imre Tachtav the man. Ilema Tachtav the Baal. Ilema Tachtav the Baal Behema. That if Marshall gives it to Berish to watch for him, so Marshall is instead of Berish, Berish is instead of Marshall for all liabilities. So the Gemara says, well, of course, that we already learned. Tanina Chodazimna. We learned that already once in the Masechta. Masru l'shem chinam. If you give it over to a shomer that watches it for free, or l'shayel to one who borrows it, l'naisi sachar, paid watchman, or l'seicher to a renter, kula nichnasu takas abalim. Ella, what it means is that Marshall gave it to Berish to watch, and Berish gave it to Abi to watch. Ella tacht of the shomer. Says the Gemara, it says that if Berish gives it to Abi, so Abi is now instead of Berish, and Abi is on the hook. V'shomer kama eftalei legamri, and now Berish is off the hook. So the Gemara says that's not so simple. You see, let's say Abi is a Shomer Chinam, and he'll tell Marshall, I swear that there was no negligence. Marshall could say, look, I asked Berish to watch it for me because I trust his shvuah. I don't trust your shvuah, Abi. And then Berish will still have to pay because he has liability because he had no right to give it over to Abi. That's Rava's opinion. You lame it to Avi Tiyufta to Rava, Dama Rava Shaimer Shemasal Shaimer, Chayiv. Where Berish gives it over to Abi, Berish is Chayiv. Because Marshall says, I don't trust Abi's shvuah. I only trust Berish's shvuah. Amalach Rava. So Rava will tell you, what does it mean over here, Masru L'Raya? What does it mean that Berish gave it over to the shepherd? What happened was Berish was the shepherd. Marshall gave it to his shepherd, Berish. Berish can't be in the field 24 hours. So Berish has an apprentice. Berish is allowed to give it to his apprentice, to his Barzilei, because it's assumed that when Marshall gives it to Berish is not going to be watching it for 24 hours. Says the Gemara, Amalach Rava, my Masru L'Raya, what does it mean he gives it over to his shepherd, LeBarzilei, to his apprentice? It's normal for the shepherd to give it over to his apprentice. And that's that. Now there's another version over here, but basically it says the same idea. Let's just take a drink over here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. Amen. Ikadamrei. There's another version over here. Mediktani masra l'raya. If he gives it over to a shepherd, v'loy kitani masra la'acher, and it doesn't say gives it over to someone else. That means that if a shepherd gives it, if the shimer gives it to another person, it wouldn't be good. Like Rava, because Marshall only trusts Berish, he doesn't trust Abi's oath. Shmamina my Masa L'Raya, it means Masa Raya L'Barzilei, to his apprentice. The Urche D'Raya L'Mimsa L'Barzilei. Avalach Eloi, but not to someone else. Leim Messiah L'Rava, the Amar Rava, Shaimer Shemasal, the Shaimer Chayiv. If he gives it to somebody else, he's Chayiv, because Marshall could say, I trusted Berish, I didn't trust Abi. So the Gemara says, it's no Raya. Imrei Loi, Dilma Urcha de Milsa Ketani. Maybe it says giving it to a Raya because that's the normal case, that a Raya gives it to his shepherd. But maybe it's not like Rava. Even if he gave it over to someone else to watch it, as long as he's a capable fellow, it's also potter. So that we don't have a Raya. Now, the final Gemara over here is a very interesting question. Let's say I find a expensive pair of glasses. It's a $900 pair of glasses. By the way, there is such things. It's a $900 pair of glasses. And when I keep it before I find out whose it is, do I have a din of a shomer chinam or a shomer sachar? It makes a difference if while I was watching it, before I found out that it was Dr. Black's glasses, it got stolen or lost. So if I'm a shomer chinam, I'm potter. But if I'm a shomer sachar, I'm chayiv. So you'll say, how can I be a shomer sachar? Nobody's paying me. Dr. Black doesn't even know that I have it. So the Gemara says, Itmar shomer aveda. If I'm watching someone's lost article, Rabba says I'm like an unpaid watchman. Rav Yosef, I'm a kishem sachar dami. I'm like a paid watchman. Rabba kishem chinim dami. I'm like an unpaid watchman. I'm doing it. I'm a good Samaritan. I picked up somebody's glasses. Who's paying me? My anok kamatile. Rabbi Yosef, I'm a kishem misachad dami. Nah. I'm a shem misachad. Because while I'm involving myself with the glasses, and while I'm putting up signs to let people know that I found a fancy designer glasses, at that time I'm potter from giving poor people money. Because Isaac b'mitzvah potter min a mitzvah. So I'm gaining money from the mitzvah, and therefore I'm a shem misacher. It's interesting. Rabbi Yosef, I'm a kishem misacher dami. Why? Because I don't have to give bread to an ani at that time, because I'm Isaac b'mitzvah patim in a mitzvah. I'm making something on it, and therefore it's considered like I'm getting paid. Some explain it differently. You know why Rabbi Yosef holds that when I find the glasses I'm a shomer sacher? You see, a shomer chinam, the reason why I'm pater migneva v'aveda is because otherwise, really a shomer should be responsible. But I'm pater because otherwise, when Marshall asks me to watch something, I won't do it. So therefore, they made a special dispensation that a shomer chinam is pater. But over here, I have no choice. I have to do it. Because the Torah gives me a mitzvah Shabbos Aveda. I don't have a choice not to do it. I have to do it because the Torah gives me a mitzvah Shabbos Aveda, and therefore it should have the regular responsibility of a shomer that I should be chayiv. And that's what he says. Ikid others say, Ikid Mefresheachi, Rabbi Yosef Mikashem Isachadami. Why? Because Kevin Rachman is Shabdei Balkarcha. The Torah says you don't have a choice. You have to do it. So, you can't say, well, if you won't exonerate him from Gneva and Aved, he won't do it. He has to do it. Because the Torah says, you can't hide yourself. Hilka Kashem Isachadami, and he's chayiv in Gneva of Aved. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Rabbi said we did already the Mishnah Yaimis, and now we're going to learn an amazing chok